Hey everybody, welcome to Mad Backyard. Today we're going to be talking about some of the most common mistakes people make when they first start cooking on a pellet grill. Because there is a bit of a learning curve to using these, especially if you're used to using other types of grills and smokers. Or if you're brand new to barbecue and outdoor cooking or just thinking about getting a pellet grill, hopefully these tips will save you some time and headaches along the way and you can get cooking a lot sooner. So let's get started. The first beginner mistake you can make right off the bat when you have a brand new pellet grill is not performing a burn-off before you start cooking on it. This is usually outlined in the manual for most new grills, but we also made a video showing you how to do this step by step on a brand new pellet grill. Doing a burn-off just means running it at high heat for a period of time to burn off any chemicals and residues left over from the factory that may get into your food if you just try to cook on it immediately right out of the box. This is a good practice to get into with all new grills and smokers before you start cooking food on them. After the burn-off, you may also want to apply a thin layer of cooking oil to some of the components on the inside of the pellet grill and then run it at high heat again to help bake it on. This is what's known as seasoning a new smoker, and it can help prevent rust from forming. Over time, your smoker will develop a layer of seasoning just from cooking on it, but it's good to apply this layer of seasoning as long as you're doing a burn-off anyway when the grill's brand new. I'll put a link to that video on the step-by-step process down in the description below, as well as right up here if you want to check it out after this one. We also go through how to prime the auger and fill it with pellets as well, so you definitely want to check that video out before you get started. The second mistake is not starting up the pellet grill correctly. When you first turn on a pellet grill, it usually defaults to the smoke setting, like with this pit boss, or whatever the lowest temperature setting is for that grill. And you need to leave the lid open so that there's plenty of airflow to help those pellets initially ignite. If you've seen videos online of pellet grills exploding or making a loud bang, it's typically because they tried to start them with the lid closed. So open the lid, then turn on the pellet grill and let it run through what's known as the startup cycle. You'll hear the fan kick on, you'll probably start to hear the pellets drop into the fire pot, and after about 10 minutes, you'll see what I call the white startup smoke. This means the heating element's gotten hot, the pellets are starting to smolder, but they aren't fully lit yet. This white startup smoke is why you need the lid to be open. From my understanding, this white smoke is combustible, so if you let the whole inside of your grill fill with this smoke and then the pellets ignite, that's what can cause that loud bang and cause damage to your grill. So keep the lid open, and if you keep watching it, you'll eventually see the white smoke dissipate as the pellets ignite and go from smoldering to burning, and there's now a clean fire in your fire pot. You'll also hear more of a roaring sound at this point too, as the pellets are burning an actual fire. So at this point, the pellets have ignited. You can open and close the lid anytime you want with no issue. So now close the lid and set the temperature to whatever temperature you want to cook at. This should be the procedure every time you start up your pellet grill. And that brings us to our third beginner mistake, and that's not shutting down the pellet grill correctly. Just like there's a process for starting it up safely, there is a process for shutting it down safely as well. Thankfully, it's a pretty simple automated process that's already programmed into almost every single pellet grill. When you're finished cooking and you press the power button, you'll notice that your pellet grill does not actually turn off. It enters what's called the shutdown cycle. Some people get confused by this and don't understand why their pellet grill's not turning off after they press the power button, but this is actually exactly what we want to happen. When you enter the shutdown cycle, the auger stops turning and feeding new pellets to the fire pot, the ignition rod turns off and starts cooling down, but the fan continues running for about 10 minutes, so it sounds like your pellet grill's still running. What this does is it burns up all those remaining pellets still in the fire pot very quickly so that they don't sit and smolder for a prolonged period of time. If you were to just unplug the pellet grill and not let it run through the shutdown cycle, the fan would turn off and those pellets still in the fire pot would continue to burn for a very long period of time. This is right at the same time you're walking away from your pellet grill, getting ready to eat, and you've stopped thinking about it, and those pellets just continue to sit and burn and burn and burn, and left unattended, that could lead to a very dangerous situation. So make sure to hit the power button and let it run through the shutdown cycle every time you turn it off. Never just unplug the grill. The next mistake we're going to talk about is pellet storage. Now, pellets are basically just compressed sawdust, and when you leave them outside, exposed to humidity, they become less dry and less dense. So why does this matter? Well, because now they're going to burn much, much faster. They'll never have a chance to create that much smoke, and they also won't put out as much heat. Kind of the two things we're going for here. Now, when you set the temperature on your pellet grill, the auger is going to continue to rotate and feed pellets to the fire pot at whatever rate it needs to maintain that temperature. So if they're burning up really quickly, you're going to go through way more pellets during a cook than you would otherwise need to if they were still very dense and very dry. So the best way to prevent this from happening is just don't leave your pellets sitting in the hopper of your pellet grill for an extended period of time between cooks. If you live in more of a dry desert climate, it's probably not something you need to worry about as much, but if you do live in a more wet, humid area, it's definitely something to consider. Put the amount of pellets in the hopper you think you're going to need for that cook, and if there are a lot left over afterwards, you can always empty them out to store. If you're going to be cooking the next day, you don't need to worry about this, but if you think it's going to be a week or longer until you cook again, I would definitely empty them out. Even leaving them in the bag rolled up inside your house, they can absorb some unwanted moisture, so I prefer to keep them in an airtight storage bucket. Especially if you like trying out different kinds of pellets, it's an easy way to label and organize them and just grab the ones you need depending on what you're cooking. I particularly like this pellet bucket from Oklahoma Joe's. You'll see me use it in many of my videos because not only is it a good quality airtight bucket, but it has this mesh screen insert that allows you to shake out a lot of the sawdust from a fresh bag of pellets before pouring them in the hopper. The excess sawdust does nothing but burn up instantly and create more ash, so there's no reason to pour it in the hopper along with your pellets. By storing them in a good, dry, airtight container like this, they'll make more smoke, they'll make better heat, they'll last longer, you'll use fewer of them on each cook, and this will save you a lot of money on pellets over time. I'll put a link to that Oklahoma Joe's pellet bucket that I like to use down in the description if you want to check it out. All right, guys, moving on to the 5th beginner mistake I want to address, and that's having the wrong temperature expectations for your pellet grill. If you come from the world of gas grilling, you're used to just firing up the grill and having it be at whatever temperature you want within a couple minutes. Well, with a pellet grill, you're gonna need to be a little more patient. The startup cycle we discussed at the beginning of the video is gonna take about 10 minutes on its own, and then it's gonna take anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes after that for the pellet grill to reach your desired temperature and stabilize there. So make sure to factor that time in before you fire it up and before you start cooking. I've also found letting the pellet grill preheat, sit, and stabilize for about 10 minutes before I put my food on really helps keep a more stable temperature throughout the cook. So don't put on a big cold piece of meat like a pork shoulder while the pellet grill is still preheating, or it's gonna end up overshooting your temperature trying to compensate for that. Let the pellet grill preheat, sit and stabilize for a few minutes, and then put your food on. All right, beginner mistake number 6. Along with having the wrong temperature expectations, let's talk about having the wrong smoke expectations. Now, most pellet grills are designed to run in a temperature range anywhere from about 170 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll notice some have settings called smoke or super smoke, and these are typically accompanied by a cooking temperature in the 170 to 225 degree range, depending on the brand and model. Now, you don't have to cook on the smoke setting in order to get smoke, but these are usually the temperature ranges where you will get the most smoke from your pellet grill. Keeping it in this lower temperature range, the pellets will be drip fed into the fire pot slowly, the ignition rod won't be as hot, and the pellets will smolder and smoke while they create heat. Cooking between 225 and 275 degrees Fahrenheit is typically the preferred range for most low and slow barbecue anyway, and is also where you'll end up getting the most smoke from your pellets. If you turn the temperature up higher to say 300 degrees, the auger will feed pellets to the fire more continuously, the ignition rod will be hotter, and you'll get more of an actual fire roaring in the fire pot rather than just smoldering pellets. For this reason, you'll get less and less smoke the higher the temperature you cook at. I typically don't see much smoke coming out of my pellet grill once I go over about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. This doesn't mean you won't get any wood flavor though. Remember, your heat's still coming from burning wood pellets inside the fire pot. You just won't necessarily see as much smoke. As far as smoke flavor, even cooking in these low and slow temperature ranges where you're seeing active smoke get produced, you're not going to get the same heavy smoke flavor on a pellet grill as what you might expect from an offset, charcoal, or even an electric smoker using wood chips. For some people that like a lot of heavy smoke flavor, this is a major downside of using a pellet grill. But the upside is you'll get wood flavor without ever worrying about over smoking your food, even when using pellets overnight for hours and hours and hours on something like a pork butt or a brisket. We made a video showing you how to get more smoke flavor on a pellet grill. If you want to try out our MacGyver method for burning whole wood chunks inside the cooking chamber, I find this allows you to get the best of both worlds with more smoke flavor and simple temperature control while using your pellet grill. I'll put a link to that video up here as well as down in the description. All right, guys, the next beginner mistake we're going to talk about is one of the most important ones to remember, and it's also one of the ones I see and hear about the most frequently, and that's not remembering to clean out the fire pot and the built-up layer of ash that accumulates inside of it before every cook. Let's face it, the fire pot's easy to forget about because you can't see it and it's buried down in the center of the pellet grill. If you haven't purchased a pellet grill yet, I would highly recommend looking for one that has a quick release fire pot on the bottom, like on this Pit Boss Pro series. It makes it much easier to clean out, and I'm more likely to do it more often because I don't have to take all the components out of my grill or even use a vacuum. It's very important to clean out the fire pot of all the ash buildup because this is where all the action's happening. This is where the pellets are making contact with the ignition rod and where they're making fire and smoke. If the fire pot's full of ash, it can cover up the ignition rod and the pellets won't make good contact and ignite cleanly. This can cause your temperature to fluctuate wildly as the auger keeps feeding more and more pellets, trying to get the pellet grill to come to temperature. And if it gets really bad, the lit pellets inside the fire pot can actually back up and make contact with the fresh pellets still sitting in the auger, causing them to ignite as well. This is called a burnback, and it's a very dangerous situation that can quickly lead to an out-of-control fire in your pellet grill. The same thing can also happen if you've been running at a high temperature for a while and had a raging fire going in the fire pot, and then turn off the grill without letting it run through the shutdown cycle as we discussed before. That roaring fire will continue to burn for a while if it doesn't have the fan to help put it out during the shutdown cycle, and that could eventually lead to lighting the pellets inside the auger as well. So if you see smoke coming out of your hopper, this means you have lit pellets inside your auger and it needs to be dealt with. Now, you can't just unplug the pellet grill or turn it off or close the lid and hope to snuff it out like you would on a charcoal grill. There's just too much airflow going on. With all the fuel inside the pellet grill and that fan running, that fire is never going to go out. What we need to do is get the lit pellets out of the auger and into the fire pot. So while it may seem counterintuitive, what you actually want to do is open the lid to your pellet grill and then open the lid to your hopper. Next, turn the temperature to the smoke setting or whatever the lowest temperature on your pellet grill is to get that fire in the fire pot back down to a low smolder. Then empty out all the pellets in the hopper to get rid of all that potential fuel, and so we stop adding more fresh pellets to the auger tube. This way the auger will continue to turn and keep moving those lit pellets from the auger tube into the fire pot without adding any more fresh pellets from the hopper. Keeping the lid open, the temperature in the cooking chamber will drop, so that auger will turn more rapidly, delivering those pellets even faster. If you have a prime button that manually turns the auger continuously, you can also hold that to feed them through even faster. Eventually, you'll stop seeing smoke or you'll get an error code that your pellet grill is out of pellets. This is good. This is what we're going for. At this point, it's safe to turn off the pellet grill, let it run through the shutdown cycle, and then once everything's cooled down, empty out the fire pot of all that ash so that this doesn't happen again. Okay, on to the next beginner mistake, and this is one I see all the time as well, and that's not regularly cleaning your temperature probe. That temperature probe is the only way your pellet grill knows what temperature it is inside the cooking chamber, and it does everything it's programmed to do based upon this reading. Over time, the temperature probe can get caked up with grease and soot, and it won't read the temperature accurately. Let's say you set the cooking temperature to 275 degrees. Well, it may get to 275 degrees, but if that temperature probe has a lot of gunk on it, it may think it's only 235 degrees inside the cooking chamber. So it's going to keep feeding pellets and getting hotter and hotter and hotter until it gets to what it thinks is 275 degrees, which may actually be 325 or even higher. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to maintain. The best way is just to take some isopropyl alcohol on a paper towel and wipe it down every few cooks to keep it nice and clean so that it's reading a good, accurate temperature. We also made a whole video showing you how to correct other common temperature problems on a Pit Boss pellet grill specifically, so make sure to check that video out if you have more questions about temperature control. All right, guys, we've made it to our last beginner mistake, and this mistake I see quite often is people trying to clean the grates of their pellet grill the same way they would clean them on a gas grill. On a gas grill, you can easily crank the temperature to 600 or 700 degrees, do a burn off, and really get everything off quickly with a brush. With a pellet grill, you can't really just do a high heat burn off. Even if you tried, you're gonna burn through a ton of pellets, and you're never gonna get up to 600 or 700 degrees like you'd be able to on a gas grill. So if that's the case, how do you get off all that grease and gunk without just pushing it around if you can't get up to those higher burn off temperatures like you would on a gas grill? I've tried a lot of options, and I found the best one for me is using a grill sponge like this one. I've had a few different versions of this over the years. One was called the Barbecue Daddy. Now they call this one the Mr. Barbecue, but it's made by the same people who make the Scrub Daddy kitchen sponge. And for me, it's the easiest way I've found to clean my grates. Get the pellet grill up to about 250 or 275 while you're preheating it anyway. Then dip the brush in a little bit of water, and it basically steam cleans all the grease and gunk off the grates quickly without having to run at a super high temperature. I'll put a link to this Mr. Barbecue grill brush down in the description if you want to check it out. And that's about it. So just to wrap up, make sure to always correctly go through the startup and shutdown cycles. Keep your pellets stored in a nice airtight container. Keep up with emptying your fire pot and keeping your temperature probes and grates clean. And lastly, give yourself plenty of time to cook until you get used to your particular pellet grill. I'll put a link to the full article that accompanies this video at our website, madbackyard.com, if you want to print it out and keep it as a cheat sheet. Our website's also a great place to get even more recipes and ideas to help get you started cooking on your pellet grill. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button to help support our channel. Thanks for watching.